The stars were cold and empty, just like they had always been. Captain Cora stared out of the main window of her ship, the stellar dawn. Beyond the thick glass, space stretched out like a black ocean, with tiny lights scattered across it. She had been looking at this same view for 20 years, and it never changed. Always the same empty darkness. "Captain, we're approaching the Sol system," said Tom, her navigation officer. He was young for his species, with bright blue skin and large eyes that could see far into space. "Should we begin the standard survey?" Cora nodded. "Yes. Start scanning. All the planets, look for minerals, gases, anything useful." She paused and looked around the bridge. "And keep watching for signs of life, even though we know we won't find any." The stellar dawn was home to 15 crew members from different species. All of them were part of the Helix Coalition, a group of 7 alien races who had been traveling through space together for over 1,000 years. They were explorers, scientists, and dreamers who wanted to map every corner of the galaxy. But in all their travels, they had never found another intelligent species. The galaxy was huge, with billions of stars and planets, but it seemed like they were the only ones smart enough to build spaceships and explore the cosmos. Dr. Vale was sitting at her science station, looking at data from their sensors. She was the ship's expert on alien life, even though she had never actually found any aliens. Her job was to look for signs of other civilizations, radio signals, unusual energy patterns, anything that might mean intelligent life existed somewhere else. "The same as always," she said quietly to herself. "Nothing but rocks and gas." Vale had gray skin and 4 arms, which made her very good at operating multiple computers at once. She had spent her whole career hoping to find proof that other, smart beings existed in the universe. Every day she checked thousands of signals from space, but they were always just natural sounds from stars and planets. "Doctor, are you finding anything interesting?" asked Captain Cora. "No, Captain. Just the usual cosmic background radiation and some solar flares from the local star." Vale's voice sounded tired. She had given the same report thousands of times. Before, the Helix Coalition had 7 different species working together. There were the Tal people like Captain Cora, who were tall and thin with silver skin. The Bix like Tom were short and blue with big eyes. Vale's people, the Gren, had 4 arms and were very smart. There were also the Vor, who looked like walking trees, the Kep, who were covered in fur, the Nell, who could breathe underwater, and the Zil, who were very small but could fly. All 7 species had met each other long ago and decided to work together instead of fighting. They shared their knowledge, their technology, and their ships. Together they had built a peaceful civilization that spread across hundreds of star systems. But they had one big problem. They were alone. "It doesn't make sense," said Vale, speaking to her assistant, a young Bix named Ray. "The galaxy is so big with so many planets that could support life. Mathematical probability says there should be other intelligent species out there." Ray nodded as he helped organize the data. "Maybe we're just looking in the wrong places?" "We've, been looking everywhere for 1,000 years, Vale replied. "We've visited over 50,000 star systems. We found plenty of simple life. Plants, animals, even some smart creatures like dolphins and elephants. But nothing that builds cities or spaceships." The truth was that the coalition had grown comfortable being alone. Their technology was focused on exploration and science, not on war or defense. They had a few small patrol ships to protect their mining operations from asteroids and space pirates, but they didn't have a real military. Why would they need one? There was no one to fight. "Captain," called Nix from the communication station, "I'm picking up some unusual readings from the 3rd planet in this system." Nix was a Kep, covered in soft brown fur with sensitive ears that could hear radio signals from very far away. He was the best communication officer in the Coalition fleet. Captain Cora walked over to his station. "What kind of readings?" "Well, that's the strange part. They look like organized transmissions. Not natural phenomena, but actual signals with patterns and structure." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Nix. "Are you sure?" asked Dr. Vale, her 4 arms moving quickly across her computer controls. "I'm running the analysis now," Nix said. his ears twitching with concentration. The signals are primitive compared to our technology, but they're definitely artificial. Someone is broadcasting from that planet. Dr. Vale's computers began showing the data. On her screens, wave patterns moved up and down in clear, organized sequences. These weren't random sounds from nature. These were messages created by intelligent beings. "This is impossible," whispered Tom. Captain Cora felt her heart beating faster. In 1,000 years of exploration, this was the moment every coalition member had dreamed about. First contact with another intelligent species. "How advanced are they?" she asked. Vale studied the signals carefully. "Based on the frequency and power levels, I'd say they're in the early stages of technological development. Maybe similar to where we were 2,000 years ago. They have radio, probably some space technology, but nothing close to interstellar travel." "What should we do?" asked Ray. This was the question that would change everything. The coalition had protocols for this situation, but they had never expected to actually use them. They had rules about how to approach a new species, how to study them, and whether to make contact. "First, we observe," said Captain Cora. "We need to learn about these beings before we make any decisions. Move the ship to a safe distance and begin long-range scanning. I want to know everything about them. Their technology, their society, their biology." "Should we report this to Coalition Command?" asked Tom. "Not yet. Let's gather more information first. This is too important to rush." As the stellar dawn moved closer to the third planet, their sensors began picking up more details. The planet was mostly blue and green, covered with water and land. The atmosphere contained oxygen and nitrogen, perfect for supporting life. "I'm detecting multiple energy sources across the planet's surface," reported Vale. "Large cities, industrial areas, and what looks like primitive spacecraft in orbit around the planet." The crew gathered around the main viewing screen as images of the planet appeared. They could see continents, oceans, and clouds. In the dark areas where it was night, thousands of small lights showed where cities were located. "They call their planet Earth," said Nix, who had been listening to their radio transmissions. "And they call themselves humans." Dr. Vale was practically shaking with excitement. After decades of searching, she had finally found what she was looking for, another intelligent species. But as she studied the human transmissions more carefully, she began to notice something troubling. Many of the signals were about conflict, wars, weapons, fighting between different groups of humans. "Captain," she said slowly, "I think we need to be very careful with these humans. Their entire history seems to be filled with violence and warfare. They're constantly fighting each other." Captain Cora looked at the peaceful planet spinning below them. It was hard to believe that such a beautiful world could be home to a violent species. "We'll study them from a distance," she decided. "We need to understand what kind of beings they are before we make contact. Set up a hidden observation post in the asteroid belt. We'll watch and learn." As the stellar dawn moved to its hiding place, none of the crew could have imagined what was coming. Far beyond the edge of the galaxy, in the cold darkness between stars, ancient sensors had detected their presence. The humans were not the only ones who had been discovered that day. Something else was watching, something that had been waiting, in the void for civilizations to mature. And now it was time to harvest what had grown. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes being alone was safer than being found. The news spread through Coalition space like wildfire. Within hours of Captain Cora's report, every major world in the Helix Coalition knew about the discovery of Earth. Emergency meetings were called on 7 different planets as leaders tried to decide what to do about the humans. Dr. Vale sat in the observation deck of their hidden base in Earth's asteroid belt, watching the blue planet spin slowly in the distance. For 3 weeks now, she had been studying human society through their radio and television signals. What she found both amazed and worried her. "They're incredible," she told her research team. "In just a few thousand years, they've gone from using stone tools to splitting atoms. Their rate of technological advancement is unlike anything we've ever seen." Ray, her young assistant, was looking at data about human history. But they're so violent, Doctor. Look at this. They've had over 15,000 wars in their recorded history. They've invented weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Vale nodded sadly. This was the problem that kept the coalition leaders awake at night. Humans were clearly intelligent and creative, but they were also dangerous. Every advancement they made seemed to lead to new ways of fighting each other. "Captain," called Tom from the communication station, "we're receiving an urgent message from Coalition Command." Captain Cora walked over and activated the secure channel. The face of Admiral Rex appeared on the screen. He was an old Tal with silver hair and worried eyes. "Captain Cora," the Admiral said, "the Council has made their decision about the humans. You are ordered to maintain observation only. Under no circumstances are you to make contact with this species." "Sir, with respect, I think we should consider peaceful contact. They could be valuable allies." Admiral Rex shook his head. "Have you seen their military capabilities? They have enough nuclear weapons to destroy their planet 10 times over. These beings are too dangerous to approach. We will continue to study them from a distance until the Council decides their fate." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Dr. Vale felt her heart sink. She had spent her life searching for other intelligent life, and now that she had found it, the Coalition was too afraid to say hello. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbit, something was going wrong. Marcus Reed was supposed to be having the best day of his career. The former Marine had worked for years to become an astronaut, and today he was on a solo mission to repair a broken communications satellite. It was routine work, but Marcus loved being alone in space, looking down at his home planet. But then his ship's engine made a sound it wasn't supposed to make. "Control, this is Reed," he said into his radio. "I'm showing engine failure, attempting restart." The restart didn't work. Neither did the backup systems. Marcus tried everything he could think of, but his small spacecraft was dead in the water. Worse, he was slowly drifting away from Earth's orbit. "Control, I have a problem. All systems are down and I'm losing orbit. Request immediate rescue mission." "Copy that, Reed. We're working on it, but the nearest rescue ship is 6 hours away. Can you maintain life support that long?" Marcus checked his instruments. "Negative. I've got maybe 3 hours of air left." From their hidden base in the asteroid belt, Dr. Vale watched the humans' predicament unfold. The Coalition sensors were much better than Earth's technology, so they could see exactly what was happening to Marcus Reed. His ship's power core is failing, she reported to Captain Cora. At current drift rate, he'll be too far from Earth for rescue in 2 hours. "That's unfortunate," said the captain. "But it's not our problem. We have orders not to interfere." But Dr. Vale couldn't just watch a sentient being die. She had spent her career studying life in all its forms, and she couldn't stand by while someone died when she had the power to help. "Captain, we could save him easily. A simple tractor beam pull, bring him aboard, then return him to Earth's orbit. No one would ever know." "Absolutely not." Admiral Rex was very clear. Dr. Vale spent the next hour watching Marcus Reed try to fix his ship. The human showed remarkable calmness and problem-solving skills, even though he knew he was probably going to die. He kept working, kept trying different solutions, never giving up hope. This impressed Vale more than all the human wars and weapons. This one man alone in the darkness facing death with courage and determination. This was the kind of being she wanted to meet. "Captain," she said quietly, "I'm going to save him." "Doctor, I order you not to." But Vale was already moving. She ran to the shuttle bay, started up a small rescue ship, and launched before anyone could stop her. Her forearms moved quickly across the controls as she flew toward the dying human spacecraft. Marcus Reed was down to his last 30 minutes of air when something impossible happened. A ship appeared next to him, but it wasn't from Earth. It was sleek and silver, with technology he had never seen before. A gentle blue beam surrounded his ship and began pulling him toward the strange vessel. Marcus tried to call Earth on his radio, but the signal was being blocked somehow. "Unknown ship, this is astronaut Marcus Reed. Please identify yourself." A voice answered him, speaking perfect English but with an accent he couldn't place. "Human Marcus Reed, you are in danger. We are bringing you aboard our vessel to save your life." Please do not be afraid. The next few minutes were like a dream. Marcus's ship was pulled into a cargo bay that was much larger than it should have been. The air around him shimmered as some kind of force field kept the atmosphere inside. When the bay doors closed, Marcus opened his ship's hatch and stepped out onto an alien spacecraft. Dr. Vale was waiting for him. She was nervous. This was the first time anyone in the coalition had met a human face-to-face. Marcus was taller than she expected, with dark skin and intelligent eyes that showed surprise but not panic. "You're not human," Marcus said simply. "No, I am not. My name is Dr. Vale. I am from a species called the Gren, and I am part of an alliance called the Helix Coalition. We have been watching your planet." Marcus looked around the cargo bay, taking in the advanced technology. "How long have you been watching us?" "Only a few weeks since we discovered your signals. But Marcus Reed, I must tell you something important. My people are afraid of your species." "Afraid of us? Why?" Vale's forearms moved nervously. "Because humans are warriors. Your entire history is filled with conflict and violence. My people are peaceful explorers, and they think humans are too dangerous to contact." Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about this. "And yet you saved my life." "Yes, because I believe there is more to humanity than just violence. I have been studying your culture, your art, your science. You are capable of great beauty and kindness too." Captain Cora's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Dr. Vale, return to base immediately. You have violated direct orders." Vale looked at Marcus apologetically. "I have to take you back to Earth's orbit. My captain is very angry with me." As they flew back toward Earth, Marcus asked hundreds of questions about the Coalition, their technology, and their travels through the galaxy. Vale was impressed by how quickly he understood complex concepts and how curious he was about everything. "Your species learns very fast," she observed. "We have to," Marcus replied. "On Earth, if you don't adapt quickly, you die. That's probably why we seem so violent to you. We've had to fight to survive for millions of years." When they reached Earth's orbit, Vale prepared to transfer Marcus back to his repaired ship. But before he left, he turned to her with a serious expression. "Dr. Vale, I need to ask you something important. Are there other species out there besides yours? Other threats we should know about?" Vale hesitated. According to Coalition protocols, she shouldn't share this information. But something in Marcus's eyes told her this was important. "The galaxy is very large, Marcus Reed. My people have explored much of it, but not all. There are always unknown regions." Marcus nodded slowly. "If something dangerous ever comes to Earth, will your people help us?" "I don't know," Vale admitted, "but I hope so." As Marcus returned to his ship and flew back to Earth, both he and Vale knew that something important had changed. First contact had happened, even if it was unofficial. But neither of them knew that, far out in the dark space between galaxies, ancient sensors had detected the Coalition's presence near Earth. Something old and hungry was already moving toward them, traveling at speeds that should have been impossible. The quiet galaxy was about to become very loud indeed. The first warning came from the edge of Coalition space, where the galaxy ended and endless darkness began. Captain Cora was reviewing Dr. Vale's report about her meeting with the human Marcus Reed when the emergency signal arrived. The message was short and terrifying. "Unknown fleet approaching. Massive energy signatures. Request immediate assistance." Then the signal went dead. "Tom, set course for the outer rim immediately," ordered Captain Cora. "Maximum speed." The Stellar Dawn jumped to hyperspace, but they were too late. When they arrived at the last known position of the research station, they found only debris floating in space. Twisted metal and burned fragments were all that remained of a facility that had housed 300 Coalition scientists. "Captain," said Nix, his fur standing on end as he monitored the communication frequencies. "I'm picking up a transmission. It's not Coalition code." The main screen activated, showing a figure that made everyone on the bridge step backward. The being was tall and covered in dark metal armor. Its face was hidden behind a mask that glowed with red light. When it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical. "People of this galaxy, You have lived in ignorance for too long. We are the Dominion, and we have returned to claim what is ours. You have grown soft and weak during our absence. Now you will submit or you will be removed. The transmission showed images of massive ships, each one larger than an entire coalition city. They moved through space like dark shadows, their hulls absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Weapons that could destroy planets hung from their sides like the claws of some giant beast. Submit within one standard cycle, or face extinction. This is your only warning. The screen went black, leaving the bridge in shocked silence. Dr. Vale was the first to speak. How is this possible? We've mapped the entire galaxy. Where did they come from? The void between galaxies, said Captain Cora quietly. They've been hiding in the darkness, watching us grow and develop. Now they think we're ready to be harvested. Within hours, more Coalition worlds fell silent. The Dominion fleet moved through space faster than anything the Coalition had ever seen, striking without warning and leaving nothing but destruction behind. Admiral Rex called an emergency meeting of all Coalition captains. His image appeared on screens throughout the fleet, but he looked older and more tired than anyone had ever seen him. The situation is worse than we thought, he began. The enemy fleet numbers in the thousands. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. They're using weapons and propulsion systems that our scientists say should be impossible. Captain Cora raised her hand. What about our military forces? Surely we can mount some kind of defense. The Admiral's expression grew even more grim. We have 200 patrol ships scattered across 700 star systems. The enemy has 3,000 warships, each one more powerful than our entire fleet combined. They're not just more advanced. They're built for conquest. Dr. Vale watched the tactical displays in horror. Red markers showed Dominion forces advancing through Coalition space like a plague. Every few hours another world went dark. How long before they reach the core worlds? Asked Tom. At current speed, less than 2 weeks. We're trying to evacuate civilian populations, but there's nowhere to run. They're coming from all directions. The meeting ended with no real plan, only desperation. The Coalition had spent 1,000 years exploring and learning, but they had forgotten how to fight. Their ships were built for science, not war. Their people were teachers and artists, not soldiers. Back at their hidden base near Earth, Marcus, Reed watched the Coalition's desperate communications with growing alarm. Even though he was just one human on a small planet, he could see what the aliens couldn't. They were going to lose. Dr. Vale, he said during one of their secret meetings, your people are fighting the wrong kind of war. Vale looked at him with confusion. What do you mean? You're trying to fight them like this is some kind of formal battle between two armies. But these Dominion forces aren't playing by rules. They're hunters, and you're prey. Marcus had spent years as a Marine before becoming an astronaut. He understood warfare in ways that the peaceful Coalition never could. Show me their attack patterns. Dr. Vale displayed the tactical information on her screens. Marcus studied it for several minutes, his face growing more serious. See how they attack? They hit the strongest targets first, your military bases, your government centers. They want to cut off your head and make the body die, but they're making mistakes too. What kind of mistakes? They're overconfident. They expect you to fight like every other species they've conquered, organized, predictable, following standard military doctrine. But what if you didn't? Vale didn't understand. How else would we fight? Marcus smiled grimly. Like humans. Meanwhile, the Dominion advance continued relentlessly. Their commander, Lord Kane, stood on the bridge of the flagship Death's Edge, watching Coalition worlds fall one by one. He had conquered dozens of galaxies during his long life, and this one was proving to be just as easy as all the others. Status report, he commanded. His lieutenant, a cyborg creature with half its body replaced by machines, stepped forward. 17 more systems have surrendered, my lord. Resistance is minimal. The Coalition forces are retreating rather than fighting. Lord Kane nodded with satisfaction. This was how it always went. Advanced civilizations became soft over time, losing the killer instinct that had helped them evolve in the first place. They focused on art, science, and philosophy, while forgetting the harsh realities of survival. "What about their military technology?" he asked. "Primitive, my lord. Their shields can barely stop our lightest weapons. Their ships are slow and clumsy. Some of them don't even have proper weapon systems. They're exploration vessels trying to fight warships. And their tactics? Non-existent. They group their ships together in large formations that make easy targets. They broadcast their positions on open channels. They even try to negotiate during battle." The lieutenant's mechanical voice carried what might have been amusement. Lord Kane had seen this pattern in every galaxy he had conquered. Peaceful species developed amazing technology for exploration and research, but they lost the ability to use that technology for war. They became sheep, ripe for harvesting. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "Focus on their industrial worlds. Once we control their manufacturing, the rest will surrender quickly." But as the Dominion fleet moved deeper into Coalition space, Lord Kane began to notice something unusual. Small groups of Coalition ships were starting to fight differently. Instead of the predictable formation attacks, they were using hit-and-run tactics. Instead of trying to protect fixed positions, they were striking at supply lines and communication relays. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we're seeing changes in enemy behavior. Some of their forces are abandoning standard Coalition tactics." "Explain." "They're using surprise attacks, sabotage, even suicide runs against our larger ships. It's crude but effective. We've lost 3 cruisers to these new tactics." Lord Kane frowned. This was unexpected. In his experience, once a species became civilized, they lost the savage instincts needed for irregular warfare. But some Coalition forces were starting to fight like primitives, unpredictable, ruthless, willing to sacrifice themselves for small victories. "Where are these new tactics coming from?" "Unknown, sir. The attacks seem to be coordinated, but we can't track the source of the commands." What Lord Kane didn't know was that Marcus Reed was secretly transmitting tactical advice to Coalition forces throughout the galaxy. Using the communication systems on Dr. Vale's ship, he was teaching alien commanders how to think like human guerrilla fighters. "Don't fight their strength," he told Captain Cora during one encrypted transmission. "Hit them where they're weak. Destroy their supply ships, attack their communication arrays. Make them afraid to spread out their forces." Captain Cora was skeptical at first. "These tactics seem dishonorable." "Honor won't save your people," Marcus replied bluntly. "The Dominion isn't interested in fair fights. They want to wipe you out. Sometimes you have to fight dirty to survive." Dr. Vale watched as Coalition forces slowly began to adopt human-style warfare. It went against everything their peaceful culture had taught them, but it was working. Dominion losses were mounting, and their advance was slowing. But even with these new tactics, the Coalition was still losing. The enemy simply had too many ships, too much firepower. They needed something more, something the Dominion would never expect. "Marcus," said Dr. Vale during one of their planning sessions, "what would your people do if Earth was attacked by such a force?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars. "We'd fight with everything we had. Every man, woman, and child would become a soldier. We'd use every weapon we could build, steal, or improvise. And if we couldn't win," he turned to look at her, "we'd make sure the enemy paid such a high price that they'd never want to fight humans again." Dr. Vale felt a chill run through her body. She was beginning to understand why her people were afraid of humans. They weren't just violent. They were willing to do anything to survive. "Would Earth help us fight the Dominion?" she asked. Marcus considered this carefully. "Maybe. But first you'd have to officially ask for help. And you'd have to be prepared for what that means." "What does it mean?" "It means your peaceful galaxy is about to learn how humans really fight." The message that changed everything arrived on Earth at exactly 3:47 a.m., Greenwich Mean Time. Marcus Reed sat in the secret communication room he had built in his garage, talking to Dr. Vale through encrypted channels. The Coalition was losing, badly. 3 more worlds had fallen just that day, and the Dominion fleet was only 5 days away from the core systems. "Marcus," Dr. Vale said, her forearms moving frantically across her controls. "We need to make an official request. Captain Cora has convinced Admiral Rex that we need Earth's help. Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been preparing for. Are you sure about this? Once I send this message, everything changes. Your people won't be able to pretend humans don't exist anymore. We're going to die anyway if we do nothing. At least this gives us a chance. Marcus activated his transmitter and sent a coded message to every major government on Earth. The message was simple but shocking. This is Marcus Reed, astronaut. Alien invasion coming. Need immediate response from all world leaders. This is not a drill. Within 30 minutes, his phone was ringing. Within an hour, military helicopters were landing in his backyard. Within 6 hours, he was sitting in a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, facing the most powerful leaders on Earth. General Lisa Torres, head of the U.S. Space Command, stared at the proof Marcus had provided. Video recordings of coalition ships, tactical data about the Dominion fleet, and star charts showing the invasion route. So let me understand this correctly, she said in her calm, professional voice. There's a galactic government of peaceful aliens, and they're being wiped out by space conquerors who are heading toward Earth next. That's correct, General. And these friendly aliens want our help to fight off the bad guys? Yes, ma'am. General Torres looked around the room at the other military leaders. Gentlemen, ladies, we're looking at either the biggest hoax in history or the most important moment in human civilization. The President of the United States leaned forward. Assuming this is real, what are we dealing with? How much time do we have? Marcus activated the holographic display Dr. Vale had given him. Images of Dominion warships filled the room, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The enemy fleet has about 3,000 ships. Each one is roughly the size of a city, and armed with weapons that make our nuclear missiles look like firecrackers. They'll reach coalition space in 4 days, and if they win there, Earth is next. The room fell silent as world leaders absorbed this information. What about our new alien friends? Asked the British Prime Minister. What can they contribute to the fight? The coalition has better technology than us in some areas. Faster ships, better shields, advanced communications. But they have almost no military experience. They've been peaceful for over 1,000 years. General Torres smiled grimly. While we've been fighting wars for our entire existence. Exactly. They're like a university professor trying to fight a gang of street thugs. Smart, but completely unprepared for real violence. Within hours, a decision was made that would have seemed impossible just days before. Every nation on Earth began mobilizing for interstellar war. Old enemies became instant allies as humanity faced the possibility of extinction. The response was swift and terrifying in its efficiency. China began retrofitting their nuclear arsenal with coalition shield technology that Marcus provided. Russia started mass-producing modified spacecraft using hybrid human-alien designs. The United States recalled every soldier, sailor, and pilot from around the world. But it was more than just the military response that impressed Dr. Vale as she watched from her hidden base. It was how quickly human society transformed itself. Factories that made cars began producing spacecraft. Scientists who studied medicine started designing weapons. Even children were learning basic military skills in schools just in case the adults failed to protect them. I don't understand, Dr. Vale told Marcus during one of their conversations. How is your species doing this so fast? It would take the coalition years to organize such a response. Marcus looked out at the Earth below, where lights burned in. Every city as humans worked around the clock to prepare for war. Because we've always known this day might come, he said simply. Every human grows up understanding that someday, someone might try to destroy us. We've been preparing for this, fight our whole lives, even if we didn't know it would come from space. General Torres took command of the Unified Earth Defense Force, coordinating with coalition officers who had been secretly brought to Earth. She was amazed by the aliens' advanced technology, but horrified by their complete lack of military thinking. Captain, Cora, she said during a strategy meeting, your people have ships that can travel faster than light, shields that can stop nuclear weapons, and sensors that can see across star systems. How did you lose so badly to the Dominion? Captain Cora looked embarrassed. We We tried to negotiate first. We thought if we explained that we were peaceful, they would leave us alone. You tried to negotiate with an invasion force? Yes. We sent diplomatic messages and offered to share our scientific knowledge in exchange for peace. General Torres rubbed her forehead. Captain, rule number 1 of warfare. When someone attacks you, they're not interested in talking. They want you dead or enslaved. Everything else is just a distraction. The cultural differences were shocking. Coalition officers wanted to minimize casualties and avoid damaging enemy ships if possible. Human commanders wanted to kill as many enemies as quickly as possible before they could kill humans. You're thinking like this is a police action, General Torres explained to a group of coalition captains. This is war. The goal isn't to arrest the bad guys or teach them a lesson. The goal is to make them stop existing. Dr. Vale watched these strategy sessions with growing amazement and fear. Humans approached warfare like scientists approached research, methodically, creatively, and without emotional attachment to conventional thinking. What if we use their own weapons against them? Suggested Colonel James Park, a human tactical expert. These Dominion ships are networked together for coordination. If we can hack their systems, impossible, said a coalition technical officer. Their security protocols are too advanced. For you, maybe, said Dr. Sarah Kim, a human cyber warfare specialist. But you're thinking like people who follow rules. Hackers don't follow rules. As the days passed, something incredible began to happen. Coalition ships started arriving at Earth, carrying refugees and the remnants of their military forces. Instead of the primitive planet they expected to find, they discovered a world transforming itself into a fortress. Orbital weapons platforms were being constructed at impossible speed. Human engineers had somehow figured out how to mass-produce coalition shield generators. The space around Earth buzzed with activity as two species worked together to prepare for the fight of their lives. Tom, the young coalition navigator, stood on the observation deck of a human space station, watching Earth's moon. The humans had built weapons on its surface that could destroy entire fleets. How did they do all this so fast? He asked Dr. Vale. Because they never stopped preparing for war, she replied. While we were exploring and learning, they were fighting and adapting. Every human invention, every piece of technology, can be turned into a weapon if necessary. On Earth's surface, factories worked day and night. But it wasn't just weapons they were producing. Human creativity was finding ways to combine coalition technology with human tactics in ways that neither species had imagined alone. Look at this, said Marcus, showing Dr. Vale a new type of fighter craft. We took your shield technology and put it on our fastest jets. Now we have ships that can fly inside enemy formations and attack from within their own defenses. That seems very dangerous for the pilots. Marcus grinned. Humans volunteer for dangerous missions. Some of our best pilots are lining up to fly. Suicide runs against Dominion command ships. Dr. Vale felt that familiar chill. She was beginning to understand that humans didn't just fight to win. They fought with a intensity that bordered on madness. As the Dominion fleet approached the solar system, Lord Kane received reports that confused him. Long-range sensors showed Earth surrounded by an impossible number of defensive installations. The primitive planet he had expected to find was bristling with weapons and shields. How many ships does this species have? He asked his intelligence officer. Unknown, sir. Our sensors are detecting thousands of energy signatures, but many of them don't match any known ship designs. And their technology level? Also unknown. They seem to be using a combination of primitive and advanced systems. Some of their weapons appear to be nuclear-based, but they're combined with shield technology we've only seen from the Coalition. Lord Kane stared at the tactical display. In all his centuries of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. A single planet that had somehow become a military fortress in less than a week. Sir, reported his communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through. The face that appeared on the screen was unfamiliar. Not Coalition, but something new. The being had pale skin, dark hair, and eyes that showed no fear, only cold determination. I am General Lisa Torres of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. You have attacked our allies and threatened our world. We are prepared to defend ourselves. Surrender now, or face the consequences." Lord Kane laughed. "One primitive planet dares to threaten the Dominion? You will be destroyed like all the others." General Torres smiled, and Lord Kane felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. "We'll see about that," she said, and ended the transmission. The war for Earth was about to begin. The Battle of Sol began at dawn on a Tuesday. Lord Kane's massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, expecting to find a frightened, primitive world begging for mercy. Instead, they flew into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The first surprise came from the asteroid belt, where Marcus Reed and Dr. Vale watched from their hidden base. What the Dominion thought were simple space rocks suddenly came alive with weapons fire. Humans had hollowed out hundreds of asteroids and filled them with nuclear missiles guided by coalition targeting systems. "Contact!" shouted Tom from his station as explosions bloomed across the enemy formation. Direct hits on 12 Dominion cruisers. Lord Kane stood on his command bridge, watching his ships take damage from weapons that shouldn't exist. "How are they hiding military installations? In asteroids?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors show solid rock, but they're definitely firing at us." The second surprise came from Earth's moon. The humans had built massive railguns on the lunar surface, weapons that could throw metal projectiles at nearly the speed of light. When they fired, streaks of light crossed the solar system and punched through Dominion shields like they were paper. "Impossible," Lord Kane's tactical officer reported. "They're using kinetic weapons combined with energy shields. The combination shouldn't work." But it did work, because humans didn't care about what should be possible. They only cared about what could kill their enemies. General Torres coordinated the defense from a command center buried deep beneath Earth's surface. Around her, human and coalition officers worked together, their screens showing the battle unfolding across millions of kilometers of space. "Phase 1 complete," reported Colonel Park. "Enemy formation is breaking up. They're trying to regroup." "Don't let them," ordered General Torres. "All units begin Phase 2. Let's show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The third surprise was the fighter attack. Dominion sensors detected thousands of small craft approaching at high speed, but these weren't normal fighters. Humans had taken coalition shield technology and built ships around it that could survive impossible maneuvers. Jake Reaper Morgan led the first wave, his fighter screaming through space at speeds that should have killed him. But human pilots had always been crazy, and now they had alien technology to make their insanity even more deadly. "This is Reaper 1 to all fighters," he called over the radio. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to kill everything that moves. No mercy, no quarter." The human fighters dove into the Dominion formation like angry wasps, firing nuclear missiles at point-blank range and using kamikaze tactics that no sane species would attempt. They flew inside enemy ships' shield bubbles, making it impossible for the larger vessels to fire without hitting their own forces. Lord Kane watched in horror as his perfectly organized fleet fell into chaos. "These tactics are insane. They're destroying themselves to kill us. Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count them. The enemy fighters they're ramming our cruisers. They're using their own ships as weapons." This was something Lord Kane had never encountered. Every species he had conquered fought to preserve their own lives, but humans seemed willing to die if it meant taking enemies with them. "All ships fall back to defensive formation," he ordered. "We need to regroup." But the humans weren't finished. The fourth surprise came from Earth itself. Dr. Sarah Kim and her cyber warfare team had been studying captured Dominion technology for days. While the aliens thought their computer systems were impregnable, humans approached hacking like art, creative, unpredictable, and completely willing to break every rule. "General Torres," Sarah reported, "we're inside their network. Their ships are all connected through quantum communication links. If we can corrupt the right systems, do it." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries. The Dominion's own weapons turned against them as human hackers took control of their targeting systems. Dominion ships began firing on each other, their sophisticated AI systems convinced that their own allies were enemies. Lord Kane's flagship shuddered as friendly fire from his own fleet struck the shields. What's happening? Why are our ships attacking each other? The humans have somehow infiltrated our systems, sir. They're turning our weapons against us. Impossible! Our security protocols are unbreakable. But humans didn't try to break the security. They convinced it that they belonged there. They used social engineering, psychological tricks, and pure creative thinking to make the Dominion computers think the humans were authorized users. As his fleet fell apart around him, Lord Kane finally understood what he was facing. This wasn't just another primitive species ripe for conquest. These were beings who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill efficiently. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving another transmission from the planet." General Torres appeared on the screen again, but now she was standing in front of displays showing the burning remains of the Dominion fleet. "Lord Kane," she said calmly, "you made a mistake coming here. You thought Earth was just another target. But this planet has been preparing for this fight for millions of years. Every war we've fought, every weapon we've built, every tactic we've learned, it was all practice for this moment." Lord Kane tried to maintain his composure. "You may have won this battle, but the Dominion has thousands of fleets. We will return with—" "No, you won't," General Torres interrupted. "Because we're not just going to beat you here. We're going to make sure you never threaten anyone again." The final phase of the battle began with Marcus Reed leading a boarding party onto Lord Kane's flagship. The Marine-turned-astronaut had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of all, capturing the Dominion command ship and its leader. "Remember," Marcus told his team of human and coalition soldiers, "these beings have been conquering galaxies for centuries. They think they're superior to everyone else. Let's show them what happens when they mess with humans." The boarding action was swift and brutal. Dominion soldiers were trained to fight other civilized species who followed rules of warfare. They had no idea how to handle humans who used every dirty trick they could think of. Marcus and his team fought their way to the command bridge, where Lord Kane waited with his personal guards. The ancient conqueror looked at the human warrior approaching him, and for the first time in centuries felt real fear. "You don't know what you're doing," Lord Kane said. "The Dominion has ruled 100 galaxies. You cannot stop us all." Marcus smiled grimly. "Maybe not, but we can stop you. And when the rest of your people hear what happened here, they'll think twice before coming to our neighborhood." The capture of Lord Kane marked the end of the Battle of Sol. The surviving Dominion ships, leaderless and confused, retreated beyond the galactic rim, carrying word of a new power that fought like demons and thought like gods. In the aftermath, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the stellar dawn, looking out at the stars. The galaxy looked different now, not empty and cold, but full of possibilities. Dr. Vale joined him, her 4 arms working at a portable computer. "I've been analyzing the battle data," she said. "The Coalition lost fewer ships in this one fight than we lost in the entire war before Earth joined. That's because you weren't really fighting before. You were just trying not to lose." "And what were you doing?" Marcus thought about this for a moment. "We were trying to win. There's a big difference." Captain Cora approached them, carrying official documents from Coalition Command. "The Council has made their decision," she announced. "Earth is being offered full membership in the Helix Coalition, with equal voting rights and full access to our technology." "And in return?" asked Marcus. "You share your military knowledge and help us rebuild our defenses. The galaxy has learned that peace is only possible when good people are prepared to fight for it." Marcus nodded. This was fair. The Coalition had technology that could help humanity explore the stars. Humans had the warrior spirit that could protect both species from future threats. "There's one more thing," added Dr. Vale. "The Council wants to establish a new organization, a joint military force combining Coalition technology with human tactics. They're calling it the Galactic Defense Alliance. And they want humans to lead it? They want you to lead it, Marcus. You're the bridge between our two peoples." Marcus looked out at the stars again, thinking about the responsibility. Earth's children would carry both the burden and the honor of defending civilization itself. "All right," he said finally. "Let's get to work. This galaxy just got a lot more crowded, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next." The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic protection had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, ancient powers that had been sleeping for eons began to stir, drawn by the light of a species that refused to surrender. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Inside, 12 different alien species sat in their designated seats, each one representing millions of years of evolution and technological advancement. The chamber itself was a marvel, a perfect sphere floating in space with walls made of transparent crystal that showed the stars beyond. At the center of the chamber stood a holographic display showing a small blue planet. Earth, the newest discovery in their galaxy. Commander Vex stepped forward first. His body was made entirely of metal and circuits, standing 8 feet tall with glowing red eyes. The construct race had replaced their biological bodies with machines thousands of years ago. They never got tired, never felt pain, and could calculate 1,000,000 possibilities in a single second. "Fellow council members," Vex said, his voice sounding like metal grinding against metal, "we have a problem." The other aliens turned their attention to him. Queen Nala of the Hive clicked her sharp mandibles together. She looked like a giant ant, but her mind was connected to billions of other insects across 50 different worlds. When she thought entire planets moved according to her will. "What kind of problem?" asked Priest Kale of the Altari. He was 12 feet tall with blue skin that seemed to glow from within. His people had developed psychic powers so strong they could move mountains with their thoughts and read minds from across space. Vex pointed to the hologram of Earth. "This planet has achieved space travel. According to galactic law, we must evaluate them for membership in our council." A sound like wind chimes filled the chamber. It came from the wisps, beings made of pure energy who looked like glowing clouds. They had no solid bodies and could travel through space at the speed of light. "Why is this a problem?" their voice whispered through the air. "Because," said Council Leader Thane, rising from his throne, "they are primitives." Thane was ancient, even by galactic standards. His reptilian race had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years. His scales were deep green, and his yellow eyes had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. When he spoke, everyone listened. "Show them the data," Thane commanded. The hologram changed to show detailed scans of human beings. The aliens studied the information with growing amusement. "Look at this," laughed Captain Reek of the aquatic race. His fish-like body was covered in scales that could survive in the deepest oceans. "They can only live for maybe 100 years. We live for thousands. Their bodies are so weak," added General Stone of the Rock People. His body looked like it was carved from granite and bullets bounced off his skin like raindrops. "A single punch from any of us would kill them. They have no psychic abilities at all," observed Priest Kale, shaking his large head. "Their minds are completely closed. They cannot even speak to each other without making sounds with their mouths." "No energy manipulation," whispered the wisps. "They cannot even see the cosmic forces that flow through all things." Queen Nala's compound eyes studied the data carefully. "They fight among themselves constantly. Wars, violence, destruction. They have not achieved the peace that comes with true evolution." "Their technology is basic," said Vex, his mechanical voice showing slight disdain. "Chemical rockets, primitive computers, weapons that fire metal projectiles. We mastered these things millions of years ago." Captain Reek swam in a circle inside his water-filled chamber. "They cannot even survive in space without bulky suits and life support systems. We can travel through the vacuum of space with our bodies alone. And yet," said Thane slowly, "they have achieved interstellar travel. They have built ships that can cross the void between stars. By our own laws, written 10,000 years ago, any species that reaches the stars must be given the chance to prove their worth." The chamber fell silent, Everyone knew the law. It had been created to ensure that no potentially valuable species was overlooked. In the past, it had led to the discovery of 3 races that became valuable members of the galactic community. Surely, said Dr. Mind of the Brain Race, his massive head pulsing with visible thoughts, we can make an exception. My people can process information 1,000,000 times faster than these humans. I can solve mathematical problems that would take them years in a few seconds. The law is clear, Thane replied firmly. They must face the trial of supremacy. A collective groan rose from the assembled aliens. The trial of supremacy was an ancient tradition. Any new species that wanted to join the Galactic Council had to prove they could contribute something valuable. They had to face champions from each of the 12 ruling races in combat. It seems wasteful, said Captain Freeze of the Ice People. His body was made of living ice that never melted, and he could lower the temperature around him to absolute 0. These humans will not last even 1 minute against any of our champions. Perhaps that is the point, said General Stone. They will see how outmatched they are and accept a proper place as servants to their betters. Still, added Queen Nala, we must follow the proper procedures. Send them the message. Give them the choice. Thane nodded to Vex, who activated the communication system. A holographic screen appeared showing Earth's surface. They had been monitoring human communications for months, learning their languages and customs. I will send the message to their leaders, Vex announced, though I estimate a 99.7% probability that they will choose to surrender rather than face certain death. The message was transmitted across space, traveling faster than light. Through the network of communication relays that connected the galaxy, it would reach Earth in less than an hour. Meanwhile, on Earth, people went about their daily lives completely unaware that their planet had just been discovered by an alien empire. In New York, office workers hurried to their jobs. In Tokyo, students attended classes. In London, families sat down to dinner. At the United Nations building in New York, Secretary General Adams was reviewing reports about climate change when his assistant burst through the door. Sir, she said, her face pale with shock, you need to see this immediately. What is it, Lisa? Adams asked, looking up from his papers. We're receiving a transmission, sir, from space, and it's not from any human source. Adams felt his heart skip a beat. Are you certain? Lisa nodded, holding up a tablet showing complex data streams. It's coming from outside our solar system, sir, and it's addressed to the leaders of Earth. Within minutes, Adams was in the Secure Communications Center deep beneath the UN building. Scientists and military officers crowded around screens showing the incoming transmission. The message was being broadcast in every human language simultaneously. How is that possible? Asked General Brooks, a decorated military officer who served as advisor to the UN Security Council. Their technology is far beyond ours, replied Dr. Sarah Chen, the UN's chief scientist. They've analyzed our entire communication network and learned every language on Earth. The message began to play. The voice was mechanical, clearly artificial, but it spoke perfect English. People of Earth, you have achieved interstellar travel and have been detected by the Galactic Council. According to the laws that govern all civilized species, you must now face the trial of supremacy. Adams felt the blood drain from his face. Around him, the other officials exchanged worried glances. The message continued. Your species will choose one champion to face representatives from the 12 ruling races of the galaxy. If your champion succeeds, humanity will be granted membership in the Galactic Council with all the rights and privileges that come with advanced civilization. And if we fail? Adams whispered, though he already feared the answer. If your champion fails, humanity will be placed under the protection and guidance of the Galactic Council. Your planet will become a protectorate, and your people will serve the greater galactic community in whatever capacity we deem appropriate. The room erupted in urgent whispers and hushed conversations. Everyone understood what protectorate meant, slavery by any other name. You have 7 standard Earth days to choose your champion and accept the trial, the message concluded. Refusal to participate will be considered an act of aggression against the galactic order. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Admiral Torres, the head of Earth's Space Command, was the first to speak. How many races did they say? 12? 12 different alien species, confirmed Dr. Chen, reviewing the message. And our champion has to fight representatives from all of them. 1 against 12? Asked General Brooks. That's not a trial. That's an execution. Adam sat down, heavily in his chair. In less than 1 hour, humanity had gone from believing they were alone in the universe to learning they were about to become slaves to an alien empire. What do we know about these aliens? He asked. Dr. Chen pulled up the data they had gathered from the transmission. Based on the brief glimpses we got, they're far more advanced than us. Some appear to be machines, others have psychic abilities, and some don't even have physical bodies. And they want us to fight them? General Brooks shook his head. It's impossible. Even our best special forces operatives wouldn't stand a chance against technology that advanced. Maybe that's the point, said Admiral Torres grimly. Maybe this trial is just their way of making us surrender without a fight. Adams looked around the room at the faces of Earth's best and brightest military minds. They all wore the same expression, defeat before the battle had even begun. We need to contact the world leaders immediately, Adams decided. Every nation on Earth needs to know what we're facing. Over the next few hours, emergency meetings were called in every capital city on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, and kings were briefed on humanity's first contact with alien life. The news was kept secret from the general population to prevent panic, but world leaders demanded immediate action. The debates were heated. Some wanted to surrender immediately, arguing that slavery was better than extinction. Others wanted to fight, even if it meant certain death. A few suggested trying to negotiate, though no one knew how to contact the aliens to ask for different terms. As the arguments raged, one thing became clear. Humanity had to choose a champion. But how do you choose one person to fight 12 aliens who were more advanced than anything Earth had ever imagined? The clock was ticking, 6 days and counting. In the depths of space, the members of the Galactic Council watched Earth's communications with mild interest. As expected, the humans were panicking. Their primitive governments were arguing among themselves, unable to make a decision. See? Said Captain Freeze. They are not ready for galactic society. They cannot even unite their own planet in the face of this challenge. Perhaps, mused Thane, but they have not surrendered yet. That shows some spirit, at least. Spirit will not help them against our champions, declared General Stone. I could crush their strongest warrior with one hand. We shall see, said Thane. We shall see. But even as the aliens dismissed humanity's chances, none of them truly understood what they were dealing with. They had evolved beyond the need for desperate measures, beyond the experience of fighting when victory seemed impossible. They had forgotten what it meant to be mortal, to face death, and to choose to fight anyway. They were about to learn. The war room beneath the Pentagon had never seen so many important people at once. Representatives from every major military power on Earth sat around a massive table, their faces grim under the harsh fluorescent lights. Maps covered the walls, but none of them showed Earth's enemies. They showed the impossible task ahead. General Brooks stood at the head of the table, pointing to a large screen displaying what little information they had about the alien races. We've had our best analysts working around the clock, he began. The situation is worse than we initially thought. Admiral Torres leaned forward in his chair. The weathered naval officer had commanded fleets in 3 different wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. How much worse? Each alien race has mastered warfare in ways we can barely understand, Brooks replied. The constructs, those machine beings, they've replaced their entire bodies with weapons and armor. Our bullets would bounce off them, like paper balls. Colonel Martinez, representing the Latin American forces, shook his head. What about the psychic ones, the blue giants? The Altari, Brooks confirmed, reading from his notes. They can read minds, move objects without touching them, and some reports suggest they can kill with a thought. Our champion wouldn't even need to get close. They could destroy his brain from across a battlefield. The room fell into uncomfortable silence. Everyone knew they were discussing someone's death sentence. There has to be something, insisted General Petrov from Russia. Some weakness, some advantage we can exploit. Dr. Webb, Earth's leading military strategist, adjusted his glasses nervously. I've run computer simulations based on every combat scenario I can imagine. The results are always the same. Complete defeat within seconds. What about nuclear weapons? Asked General Kim from South Korea. Surely we could. The trial takes place on their space station, interrupted Admiral Torres. They control the environment, the rules, everything. This isn't a war. It's an execution disguised as a fair fight. Secretary General Adams had been quiet throughout the meeting, but now he spoke up. So what are our options? Surrender without a fight? That might be the smart choice, said Dr. Webb quietly. Slavery is still better than extinction. No, the voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see a man in simple military fatigues standing near the wall. He had been so quiet that most people had forgotten he was there. Captain Miller, said General Brooks with surprise. I didn't expect you to speak up. Jake Miller stepped forward into the light. He was not an impressive man to look at. Average height, brown hair starting to show gray at the temples, a face marked by too many years and too many wars. His uniform had no fancy decorations, no medals for heroism. He looked like any soldier you might pass on the street. With respect, sir, Miller said calmly, I think you're all looking at this wrong. Oh? Admiral Torres raised an eyebrow. And how should we be looking at it, Captain? Miller walked to the front of the room, his boots clicking on the polished floor. You're trying to figure out how to beat them at their own game, how to be stronger, faster, smarter. But that's not how humans win fights. General Petrov leaned back in his chair. Then how do humans win fights, Captain? By being human, Miller replied simply. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Dr. Webb adjusted his glasses again. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Miller looked around the room at all the important faces staring at him. How many of you have ever been in actual combat? Not commanding from headquarters, not planning from safe rooms, but actual fighting? A few hands went up reluctantly. Most of the people in the room were planners, strategists, politicians. They knew about war, but they had never walked through it. I've been fighting for 15 years, Miller continued. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine, I've been shot at, blown up, stabbed, and left for dead more times than I care to count. And you know what I learned? What? Asked Adams quietly. The enemy always has better equipment. Always. They have more men, more guns, more money, more everything. If wars were won by whoever had the best stuff, I'd have been dead 10 years ago. Colonel Martinez nodded slowly. So how do you win when you're outgunned? You don't try to match their strengths, Miller explained. You use their strengths against them. You make them think they've already won, then you hit them where they don't expect it. General Brooks frowned. But these aliens aren't human enemies. They're far more advanced than anything we've ever faced. That's exactly the point, Miller said, his voice growing more confident. They're so advanced that they've forgotten what it's like to fight dirty. They've forgotten what desperation looks like. Admiral Torres was beginning to look interested. Go on. Miller pointed to the screen showing the alien data. Look at them. Really look. The machine race, they've been machines for thousands of years. When was the last time they had to improvise to fix something with spare parts and prayer? The psychic ones, they've been reading minds for millennia. What happens when they face a mind that doesn't think like theirs? You're suggesting we can confuse them? Asked Dr. Webb. I'm suggesting they've never fought anyone like us, Miller replied. They've evolved past the need to struggle. They don't know what it's like to fight when you know you're going to lose. General Kim shook his head. That sounds like suicide with extra steps. Miller smiled grimly. Maybe. But I've been walking that line my whole career. Every battle I've ever won, I was supposed to lose. Every enemy I've ever defeated had better weapons, better training, better everything. But they all had one weakness. Which was? Adams asked. They expected to win. The room was quiet now, everyone focused on Miller's words. These aliens, they're used to being superior. They're used to their technology solving problems, their psychic powers overwhelming enemies, their perfect coordination winning battles before they start. But what happens when none of that works? What happens when someone keeps fighting even after they should be dead? Colonel Martinez was nodding slowly. You think you can survive long enough to find their weaknesses? I think I can do what every human soldier has done since the beginning of time, Miller said. I can refuse to quit. Admiral Torres studied Miller carefully. Captain, do you understand what you're volunteering for? This isn't like any battle you've ever fought. These beings can kill you with a thought. Sir, I've been in plenty of battles where I should have died. The trick isn't avoiding death, it's making sure the other guy goes first. Dr. Webb was shaking his head. The computer models show. The computer models don't account for chaos, Miller interrupted. They don't account for unpredictability. They don't account for someone who's been trained since birth to fight impossible odds. Trained since birth? Asked General Petrov. Miller looked around the room again. Every human who's ever lived has been fighting a war against extinction. We're born into bodies that break down, minds that can be hurt, a world that's trying to kill us every day. We learn to fight before we can walk. We adapt or we die. He pointed to the alien data again. These species, they conquered death long ago. They don't get sick, they don't age, they don't break. They've forgotten what it's like to be fragile. They've forgotten what it's like to be afraid. And you think that's a weakness? Adams asked. I know it is, Miller said firmly, because every time I've faced an enemy who thought they were invincible, they made the same mistake. They underestimated what a desperate human could do. General Brooks was studying Miller with new interest. What's your plan, Captain? Simple, Miller replied. I'm going to do what humans do best. I'm going to survive. And while I'm surviving, I'm going to make them make mistakes. I'm going to turn their advantages into disadvantages. I'm going to show them what happens when superior technology meets human stubbornness. Admiral Torres laughed despite himself. Human stubbornness? That's your secret weapon? Admiral, with respect, human stubbornness is why we're having this conversation instead of still living in caves. It's why we split the atom, why we went to the moon, why we've survived every extinction event this planet has thrown at us. The room was warming to Miller's confidence, but Dr. Webb still looked concerned. Captain, even if you're right about their psychology, the physical differences are enormous. Some of these beings are 12 feet tall. Others are made of pure energy. Size doesn't matter if you know where to hit, Miller said. And energy can be redirected if you know how. I've spent my career learning to turn enemy advantages against them. Give me a week to study these beings and I'll find their weaknesses. Secretary General Adams stood up slowly. Captain Miller, are you absolutely certain about this? If you're wrong, you die, and humanity becomes enslaved. Miller met Adams' eyes without flinching. Sir, I've never been certain of anything in my life. Certainty gets you killed, but I'd rather die fighting than live on my knees. The room fell silent again as everyone considered the weight of the decision. Finally, General Brooks spoke up. All right, Captain, you've got the job, but you're not going in blind. We're going to give you every advantage we can. Over the next 3 days, Miller underwent the most intensive training program ever developed. Scientists briefed him on alien psychology. Engineers showed him every piece of equipment they could design. Doctors pushed his body to its absolute limits. But the most important preparation happened in Miller's own mind. Every night, he meditated on a simple truth that every human warrior had learned. Death was not the enemy. Fear was the enemy. Hesitation was the enemy. Death was just another opponent to outmaneuver. On the 4th day, the aliens sent another message. They had prepared a special transport ship to carry Earth's champion to the neutral space station where the trial would take place. The ship would arrive in 72 hours. As Miller prepared his gear, keeping only the simplest, most reliable equipment, he thought about all the soldiers who had come before him, men and women who had faced impossible odds with primitive weapons and human determination. They had won, not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they refused to surrender. On the night before departure, Miller sat alone in his quarters writing a letter he hoped would never be read. In it, he explained his strategy to the generals, his understanding of human nature, and his faith that humanity would survive whatever came next. The last line read simply, "We don't win because we're the best. We win because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten." As he sealed the letter, Miller smiled. The aliens were about to learn something that no computer model could predict, and no advanced technology could overcome, that the most dangerous opponent was not the strongest or the smartest, but the one who had nothing left to lose. The transport ship arrived exactly on schedule, and Miller walked aboard without looking back. Earth's fate now rested in the hands of one ordinary man who had spent his life learning to do extraordinary things. The aliens were waiting. The alien transport ship was unlike anything Miller had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of liquid metal that flowed like water, but felt solid to the touch. There were no visible controls, no buttons or screens. The ship appeared to fly, itself through the vast emptiness of space. Miller sat in what he assumed was a chair, though it had molded itself to fit his body perfectly. Through the transparent walls, he watched Earth grow smaller and smaller until it was just another dot of light among the stars. He had left his home planet behind, possibly forever. Destination, Station Nexus, announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Arrival in 6 hours. Miller used the time to review everything he knew about his opponents. The data Earth scientists had gathered was limited, but it painted a terrifying picture of what he would face. The Altari champion was named Priest Kale. Standing 12 feet tall with glowing blue skin, he could read minds and move objects with pure thought. According to the data, he had never lost a battle because he could predict his enemies' moves before they made them. Unit Prime represented the constructs. It was not born but built, a perfect fighting machine with weapons integrated into every part of its titanium body. It could calculate thousands of combat scenarios per second and react faster than any living being. Queen Nala's champion was not one being but 50, a swarm of warrior insects that moved as a single mind. They could coordinate attacks with perfect precision, surrounding enemies from all directions at once. The Wisp champion existed as pure energy. It had no physical body that could be hurt, no flesh that could be cut or bones that could be broken. It could phase through solid matter and strike with concentrated plasma hot enough to melt steel. And there were 8 others, each representing millions of years of evolution and technological advancement. Miller closed his eyes and tried not to think about the impossibility of it all. Instead, he focused on what he had learned in 15 years of combat, that every enemy, no matter how powerful, had weaknesses. The trick was surviving long enough to find them. "Station Nexus approaching," the voice announced. Miller opened his eyes and gasped. The space station was enormous, easily the size of a small city. It looked like a giant sphere made of crystal and metal, with thousands of lights twinkling across its surface. Smaller ships moved around it like insects around a lamp. "First, time seeing real galactic architecture?" asked a new voice. Miller turned to see a holographic figure materialize beside him. It looked like a tall, thin alien with silver skin and large black eyes. "I am Coordinator Zix," the hologram said. "I will be managing your stay at Station Nexus." "Managing my execution, you mean?" Miller replied. Zix's expression did not change. "That is entirely up to you, human. The trials are designed to test worthiness, not to guarantee death." "How many species have passed these trials in the last 1,000 years?" 3. Miller did the math. "And how many have tried?" 47. "So 44 species failed." 44 species proved unworthy of galactic civilization, Zix corrected. They were given appropriate roles within the galactic community, as slaves, as contributors to the greater good. Miller decided not to argue the point. He would need all his energy for what was coming. The transport ship docked smoothly with Station Nexus, and Miller felt artificial gravity take hold as he stepped onto the station. The corridors were massive, clearly designed to accommodate beings, much larger than humans. Everything was clean and sterile, like a hospital built by machines. "Your quarters," Zix announced. leading Miller to a room that was larger than most apartments on Earth. You have 4 hours to prepare before the trials begin. Miller looked around the luxurious space. There was a bed that could have fit 10 people, a bathroom with features he could not identify, and a wall screen showing images of the galaxy. But what caught his attention was the window. Through the transparent wall, he could see into the station's central arena. It was a massive circular platform surrounded by viewing galleries that could hold thousands of spectators. Even now, aliens were beginning to file in, eager to watch the show. Quite a crowd, Miller observed. Representatives from over 200 species have come to witness the trials, Zix explained. It has been 50 years since the last one. There is considerable interest in seeing how primitive humans perform against galactic champions. I bet the betting odds aren't in my favor. Current odds are approximately 12,000 to 1 against human victory, Zix confirmed without emotion. Miller smiled grimly. I've had worse odds. After Zix left, Miller spent time examining his equipment. He had brought only basic gear, his standard rifle, sidearm, knife, and a few pieces of protective equipment. Compared to the advanced weapons he had seen on the alien champions, his gear looked like Stone Age tools. But Miller had learned long ago that the best weapon was not the most advanced one. It was the one you knew how to use when everything went wrong. He cleaned his rifle methodically, checking every part. He sharpened his knife until it could split a hair. He adjusted his body armor, making sure every strap was secure. These simple actions calmed his mind and prepared his body for battle. A chime sounded throughout the station. Trial participants, report to the arena, announced a voice in dozens of different languages. Miller took a deep breath, picked up his gear, and walked toward his destiny. The arena was even more impressive up close. The fighting platform was 200 feet across, made of some kind of metal that seemed to absorb light. Around it, the viewing galleries rose up like the walls of a coliseum, filled with thousands of alien spectators. Miller walked onto the platform and looked around. He was alone for the moment, but he could see movement in the tunnels that led to the arena. His opponents were coming. The first to emerge was Priest Kale of the Altari. The blue giant moved with smooth grace, his glowing skin making him look like a living statue. When he saw Miller, he stopped and tilted his massive head. Interesting, Kale said, his voice echoing strangely in Miller's mind. Your thoughts are different. Different how? Miller asked, though he suspected he already knew. Chaotic, contradictory. Most minds I encounter are ordered, predictable. Yours is like a storm. Miller smiled. That's what 15 years of combat will do to you. Kale's glowing eyes narrowed. You are not afraid. I'm terrified, Miller replied honestly. But I've learned to work with fear instead of against it. Before Kale could respond, the next champion entered the arena. Unit Prime moved with mechanical precision, its red eyes scanning Miller from head to toe. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. Scanning complete. Human designated as minimal threat. Victory probability, 99.97%. What's the other 0.03%? Miller asked. Calculation error, Unit Prime replied seriously. The hive swarm came next, 50 insect warriors moving in perfect formation. They surrounded Miller in a complex pattern, their compound eyes reflecting the arena lights. Queen Nala's voice spoke through all of them at once. We smell your fear, human. It is unusual. Most beings fear death. You fear failure. Smart bugs, Miller said, keeping his tone light despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The Wisp champion appeared as a swirling cloud of energy, its form constantly shifting and changing. When it spoke, its voice sounded like electricity crackling through the air. This one has potential, it whispered. His life force burns differently than others. One by one, the remaining champions entered the arena. General Stone of the Rock People, whose body looked like it had been carved from a mountain. Captain Mark of the Sea People, moving in a sphere of water that followed him everywhere. Captain Freeze of the Ice People, whose breath turned the air around him into frost. The bird champion Alex flew in circles overhead, his wings cutting through the air with sounds like thunder. The plant champion Root stood silently in one corner, vines and thorns growing from his wooden body. The shadow champion, Dark, seemed to flicker in and out of existence, never quite solid. Finally, the gravity champion, Heavy, entered the arena. The space around him seemed to bend and twist, and Miller felt his boots grow heavier as the being approached. "Impressive crowd," Miller said, trying to keep his voice steady. Above the arena, a floating crystal began to glow. The voice of the arena master filled the space. "Citizens of the galaxy, we gather today to witness the trial of supremacy. The species known as humans has produced a champion to face the representatives of the 12 ruling races." The crowd erupted, in sounds that Miller could not identify. Cheers, roars, clicks, and electronic noises from hundreds of different species. "The rules are simple," the arena master continued. "Combat will continue until only one champion remains standing. The human may use any equipment he has brought. The galactic champions may use their natural abilities and standard weapons." Miller looked around at his 12 opponents. Each one was a living weapon, evolved or created for the sole purpose of combat. They represented the pinnacle of their species' military might. "Any last words, human?" asked Priest Kale, his mental voice carrying a note of curiosity. Miller thought for a moment, then smiled. "Yeah, you guys are about to learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Unit Prime's mechanical voice cut through the air. "Illogical statement. Humans rank 247th in physical strength, 198th in technological advancement, and 156th in psychic ability among known species. That's your first mistake," Miller replied. "You're measuring the wrong things." "Explain," demanded General Stone, his granite voice rumbling like an earthquake. Miller looked up at the thousands of alien spectators watching from the galleries. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous? We're the only species in the galaxy that learned to thrive while dying." The arena fell silent. Even the crowd stopped its noise. "Every human who has ever lived has been in a race against time," Miller continued. "We know we're going to die, so we learn to make every moment count. We learn to fight when we're hurt, to keep going when we're tired, to find hope when everything looks hopeless." He turned to face Unit Prime directly. "You want to know our secret? We're not afraid of losing. We're afraid of not trying." The arena master's voice boomed across the arena. "Let the trial of supremacy begin." The champions began to move, and Miller felt time slow down the way it always did in combat. His training took over, his mind became clear, and his body prepared for the fight of his life. 12 against 1, impossible odds. Certain death. Miller smiled and reached for his weapon. This was going to be interesting. The first attack came from Priest Kale. The massive blue alien raised his hand, and Miller felt something trying to crush his mind like a giant fist. Pain shot through his skull as the psychic assault began. Most beings would have fallen to their knees, their minds shattered by the overwhelming force. But Miller had learned something in 15 years of combat that the Altari had never encountered: how to function through pain. Instead of fighting the psychic attack, Miller let it wash over him. He had been shot, stabbed, and blown up. He had fought battles with broken bones and internal bleeding. His mind had been trained by trauma to keep working even when his body was screaming. Kale's glowing eyes widened in surprise. "Impossible. Your mind should be paralyzed." "My mind has been paralyzed before," Miller grunted, taking a step forward instead of backward. "I learned to work around it." While Kale was distracted by his failed psychic attack, Unit Prime's targeting systems locked onto Miller. The machine's arm transformed into a cannon, and energy began to build in its barrel. But Miller had been watching Unit Prime carefully since entering the arena. The machine was perfect. Too perfect. It calculated every move, analyzed every possibility, and chose the most efficient action. That was its weakness. As the cannon charged, Miller did something that made no tactical sense. He threw himself sideways, not away from the blast, but toward Unit Prime itself. The machine's calculations had not accounted for an enemy charging. directly into danger. The energy blast missed Miller by inches and struck the arena wall instead. Before Unit Prime could recalculate, Miller slammed into the machine's legs, using his full body weight to topple the 8-foot mechanical warrior. Unit Prime crashed to the ground with a sound like breaking metal. "Error," it announced. "Human. Behavior does not match tactical predictions." "That's because humans don't fight tactically," Miller said, rolling away as Unit Prime tried to grab him. "We fight dirty." The hive swarm moved to surround Miller, their coordination perfect as always. 50 insect warriors spread out in a complex pattern designed to attack from every direction at once. Queen Nala's voice spoke through all of them. "You cannot escape us, human. We move as one mind." But Miller had fought insurgents before, enemies who used coordinated group tactics. He had learned that the strength of group coordination could become a weakness if you disrupted the pattern. Instead of trying to fight all 50 insects, Miller focused on the 3 nearest to him. He kicked dirt and debris from the arena floor into their faces, temporarily blinding them. The insects stumbled, and their perfect formation broke apart for just a moment. That moment was all Miller needed. He dove through the gap in their formation, moving toward the center of the arena where the other champions waited. "Fascinating," observed the Wisp champion, its energy form crackling with electricity. "This human thinks like a survivor, not a warrior." The Wisp tried to phase through Miller's body to strike at his heart directly, but Miller had been expecting this attack. He had fought enemies who used tricks and deception before. As the energy being passed through him, Miller did something unexpected. He grabbed a piece of metal debris from Unit Prime's fall and thrust it into the Wisp's energy form. The metal conducted the Wisp's electrical energy back into itself. The energy being screamed, a sound like lightning striking metal, and lost cohesion for several seconds. "How?" the Wisp demanded, its form flickering wildly. "Lightning rods," Miller said simply. "We learned to redirect energy a long time ago." "General," Stone of the Rock people stepped forward, his granite fists raised. "Enough tricks, human. Face real strength." The massive rock being threw a punch that could have shattered concrete. Miller did not try to block it or dodge it completely. Instead, he used the momentum of Stone's own attack against him. As the huge fist whistled past his head, Miller grabbed onto Stone's arm and used it like a rope to swing himself up onto the giant's back. Stone tried to reach behind himself to grab Miller, but his rock body was not flexible enough. "Get off me, insect," Stone roared, spinning in circles. Miller held on tight, using Stone's own movements to stay out of reach. But more importantly, Stone's wild spinning was disrupting the other champion's ability to attack. The massive rock being crashed into Captain Mark's water sphere, sending the fish-like alien tumbling across the arena. Captain Freeze tried to target Miller with his ice powers, but Stone was spinning too fast. The ice blast hit Stone instead, covering the rock giant in a layer of frost that made his movements even more clumsy. "You are turning us against each other," realized Root, the plant champion. Vines shot from his wooden body toward Miller. "That's the idea," Miller said, finally letting go of Stone and rolling away from the grasping vines. "You're all so used to fighting one opponent at a time. You don't know how to fight as a team." Alex, the bird champion, dove from above with claws extended. But Miller had been listening to the sound of his wings and knew the attack was coming. He waited until the last second, then stepped aside. Alex's claws raked across Stone's rocky back instead, sending sparks flying. "Watch where you are striking," Stone bellowed. "Watch where you are standing," Alex shrieked back. The arena was descending into chaos. The alien champions, each supreme in individual combat, were getting in each other's way. They had never learned to coordinate attacks because they had never needed to. Heavy, the gravity champion, tried to increase the gravitational field around Miller, but the effect also slowed down the other champions, making their movements sluggish and clumsy. "Turn off your gravity field," demanded Captain Mark, struggling to move through the thick water of his protective sphere. "I cannot target the human without affecting the surrounding area," Heavy replied, frustrated. Dark, the shadow champion, flickered in and out of visibility as he moved toward Miller. But in the chaos of 12 combatants fighting in the same space, Miller kept losing track of which shadow was dark and which were cast by the other champions. When dark finally materialized behind Miller, ready to strike, Miller spun around and grabbed the first thing his hand touched, which turned out to be one of Root's vines. "What are you?" Root began. Miller yanked the vine hard, using it like a whip to strike Dark just as the shadow being became solid again. Dark stumbled backward, his concentration broken. "You are using our own attacks against each other," accused Queen Nala's swarm, regrouping for another coordinated assault. "Welcome to human warfare," Miller panted, dodging another energy blast from Unit Prime. Rule number 1, there are no rules. Priest Kale tried another psychic attack, but this time Miller was ready. He had learned something important about the Altari's powers. They worked by imposing order on chaotic minds. But Miller's mind was not chaotic because he was panicking. It was chaotic because he had trained it to be. "Your mind is impossible to read," Kale said, his blue skin flickering with frustration. "How do you think so many contradictory thoughts at once?" "Practice," Miller said, then did something that shocked every alien in the arena. He smiled. Not the smile of someone who was winning, not the smile of someone who had a secret plan. It was the smile of someone who had accepted that he was probably going to die and had decided that if he was going down, he was going to make it memorable. That smile froze every alien champion for a split second. They had seen fear before, anger before, desperation before, but they had never seen someone smile while facing certain death. In that moment of hesitation, Miller moved. He had been studying the arena's layout since the fight began, noting every piece of debris, every structural weak point, every potential weapon. Now he put that knowledge to use. Miller grabbed a piece of twisted metal from Unit Prime's damaged cannon and hurled it at one of the energy conduits that powered the arena's systems. Sparks flew as the conduit overloaded. The arena's artificial gravity flickered. The lighting systems flashed on and off. Emergency alarms began to sound throughout the station. "What have you done?" demanded Coordinator Zix's voice over the arena's communication system. "Leveled the playing field," Miller said. In the strobing lights and fluctuating gravity, the alien champion's perfect coordination completely broke down. Heavy's gravity powers went wild, creating pockets of zero gravity and crushing weight throughout the arena. The Wisp's energy form became unstable, crackling wildly in all directions. Captain Mark's water sphere burst as the gravity failed, sending water cascading across the arena floor. Captain Freeze's ice powers turned the water into a slippery mess that sent several champions tumbling. Unit Prime's targeting systems could not adapt to the rapidly changing conditions. The machine spun in circles, trying to lock onto Miller's position as the human moved through the chaos like he had been born to it. "This is madness," roared General Stone, slipping on the ice and crashing into Alex. "This is survival," Miller corrected, using a piece of debris as a shield against Root's thorny vines. The crowd in the viewing galleries was in an uproar. Aliens were pointing and making sounds of confusion and amazement. They had expected to see their champions demonstrate their superiority. Instead, they were watching one primitive human turn their technological and evolutionary advantages into disadvantages. 40 seconds had passed since the fight began. Miller was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his armor was cracked, and his body was screaming with exhaustion. But he was still standing, and half the champions were on the ground or struggling to regain their footing. "Impossible," whispered Priest Kale, his psychic powers useless in the electromagnetic chaos created by the damaged arena systems. "Not impossible," Miller said, breathing hard but still moving. "Just human." The final 10 seconds were a blur of desperate action. Miller used every trick he had learned in 15 years of combat: misdirection, improvised weapons, using the environment against his enemies, and above all, refusing to give up even when victory seemed impossible. When the arena's emergency systems finally restored power and gravity, 11 alien champions lay defeated on the floor. Miller stood alone in the center, swaying slightly but still upright. The arena was completely silent. 50 seconds. That was how long it had taken one human to defeat the combined champions of 12 galactic races. Miller looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him in shock. Then he did something that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. For generations to come, he smiled again. And this time, it was the smile of someone who had just proven that the most dangerous opponent was not the strongest or the smartest, but the one who refused to accept defeat. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Then, from somewhere in the crowd came a sound that had never been heard in the arena before. Applause. The applause started with a single alien in the back of the viewing gallery. Then it spread like wildfire through the crowd. Thousands of beings from hundreds of different species were clapping, cheering, and making whatever sounds their physiology allowed to express amazement. Miller stood in the center of the arena, swaying slightly from exhaustion and blood loss. His armor was cracked, his rifle was broken, and his body felt like it had been hit by a truck. But he was alive, and he was standing. Around him, the 12 champions of the galactic races slowly picked themselves up from the arena floor. Some were injured, others were simply stunned. All of them were staring at the human who had just accomplished the impossible. Unit Prime was the first to speak, its mechanical voice filled with something that sounded almost like wonder. I have run the calculation 17,000 times. The probability of your victory was 0.003%. How did you achieve this result? Miller wiped blood from his split lip and smiled. I didn't calculate anything. I just did what humans do. I adapted. Priest Kale rose to his full 12-foot height, his blue skin flickering with confused energy. Your mind. I still cannot read it properly. How do you think in such chaotic patterns? 15 years of combat, Miller replied. Every battle teaches you to think faster, change plans quicker, and expect the unexpected. You get good at chaos or you die. The arena master's voice boomed across the arena, though there was uncertainty in its tone. By the ancient laws of the Galactic Council, the human champion has achieved victory in the trial of supremacy. However, this result requires review. A murmur ran through the crowd. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no trial result had ever required review. Review what? Demanded General Stone, brushing ice crystals off his rocky hide. The human defeated us fairly. But he did not. Fight as we expected, protested Queen Nala's swarm. He used deception, turned us against each other, damaged the arena itself. He used strategy, corrected Alex, the bird champion, preening his feathers back into order. Something we had forgotten existed. Captain Mark struggled out of the puddle. That had been his water sphere. The human fought like prey that had become predator. I have never encountered such tactics. Root, the plant champion, extended a vine toward Miller, not in attack but in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. You made us fight ourselves. That requires understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves. Heavy, the high gravity champion, was studying Miller with new interest. Your species fights wars against each other, yes? This is why you understand conflict in ways we do not. Miller nodded. Humans have been fighting humans for thousands of years. We learned every dirty trick, every sneaky tactic, every way to turn strength into weakness. When you fought your own species, fighting others becomes easier. The shadow champion Dark flickered in and out of visibility as he spoke. We evolved beyond the need for such conflicts. We thought this made us superior. It made you predictable, Miller said simply. You all fight the same way, using your best ability and expecting it to work. But what happens when your best ability becomes a disadvantage? Captain Freeze, still surrounded by a cloud of frost, shook his head slowly. We never considered that possibility. The Wisp champion crackled with unstable energy. This human has shown us something disturbing. We have grown soft. Not soft, Miller corrected. Specialized. You're all perfect at what you do, but perfection can be a trap if you never learn to improvise. Above them, the viewing galleries erupted in excited discussion. Aliens who had lived for thousands of years were seeing something they had never witnessed before. their champions being outthought by a supposedly primitive species. Coordinator Zix materialized as a hologram in the center of the arena. Human Miller, you have created a situation that requires immediate council discussion. Please remain here while the Galactic Council convenes an emergency session. How long will that take? Miller asked. Several hours, perhaps longer. This is unprecedented. Miller sat down heavily on a piece of arena debris. The adrenaline was wearing off, and every injury was starting to make itself known. Well, I'm not going anywhere. To his surprise, several of the alien champions remained in the arena rather than leaving. Unit Prime approached first, its red eyes studying Miller with mechanical curiosity. I wish to understand your thought processes, the machine said. My programming includes millions of combat scenarios, but none match what occurred here. That's because your scenarios assume both sides are trying to win the same way, Miller explained. But I wasn't trying to beat you at your own game. I was trying to change the game entirely. Priest Kale knelt down to bring himself closer to Miller's eye level. Your mind produces too many contradictory thoughts for me to read clearly. Is this intentional? Miller laughed despite his exhaustion. In a way, yeah. Human minds aren't designed for efficiency like yours. We're designed for survival. That means always having backup plans, multiple ways of looking at problems, and the ability to change our minds quickly when circumstances change. Chaos thinking, observed the Wisp champion. Adaptive thinking, Miller corrected. When you're mortal, when you know you can die at any moment, your brain learns to consider every possibility. You can't afford to be wrong. Queen Nala's swarm gathered nearby, their compound eyes reflecting the arena lights. Your species fights itself constantly. This seems inefficient. It is, Miller agreed. It's also educational. Every war teaches us new ways to fight. Every enemy teaches us new tactics. Humans have been learning from each other's mistakes for thousands of years. General Stone sat down with a thud that shook the arena floor. We have not fought true wars in millennia. We had forgotten that conflict could be instructive. Conflict is the best teacher, Miller said. It forces you to innovate, to adapt, to find solutions you never would have considered in peacetime. Alex landed nearby, his massive wings folding against his body. But surely this constant warfare makes your species unstable, violent? Miller considered this carefully. It makes us dangerous, yeah, but it also makes us survivors. Every human alive today is descended from thousands of generations of people who refused to give up, who found ways to keep going when everything looked hopeless. The path of death, said Dark, his shadow form solidifying as he spoke. You mentioned this term before. Every human walks the path of death from the moment they're born, Miller explained. We know we're going to die. We know life is fragile. So we learn to make the most of the time we have. We learn to fight for what matters, even when the odds are impossible. Root's wooden face creaked as he formed an expression that might have been understanding. Other species conquered death long ago. We forgot what it taught. Death teaches you to value life, Miller said. It teaches you that nothing is guaranteed, so you better fight for what you want. It teaches you that the only real failure is giving up. Heavy nodded slowly, the space around him bending slightly with his gravitational field. We have lived so long without real threats that we forgot how to truly struggle. The conversation was interrupted by the return of Coordinator Zix. The Galactic Council has reached a decision, the hologram announced. The arena fell silent. Even the crowd in the viewing galleries stopped their discussions to listen. Council Leader Thane will deliver the verdict personally, Zix continued. The ancient reptilian leader materialized in the arena, his massive form dominating the space. His yellow eyes surveyed the scene, the damaged arena, the defeated champions, and the small human sitting calmly among beings who could crush him without effort. In 10,000 years of galactic governance, Thane began, his voice carrying the authority of ages, we have never witnessed such a trial. Captain Miller of Earth has not merely defeated our champions, he has taught us something we had forgotten. The crowd leaned forward, hanging on every word. We have grown complacent, Thane continued. In achieving technological superiority, psychic mastery, and biological perfection, we lost the ability to adapt, to improvise, to fight when victory seems impossible. We forgot that true strength comes not from never failing, but from refusing to stay down when you fall. Miller felt, his heart racing as he waited for the verdict. The Galactic Council hereby declares that humanity has not only passed the trial of supremacy, but has exceeded all expectations. You are granted full membership in the galactic community. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Thane was not finished. Furthermore, the ancient leader continued, we formally request that humanity provide military advisors to help other species relearn the arts of adaptive warfare and strategic thinking. Miller blinked in surprise. You want us to teach you how to fight? We want you to teach us how to survive, Thane corrected. How to think like prey that refuses to be eaten. How to find victory when all logic says defeat is certain. Unit Prime stepped forward. I request to study human military tactics. My programming requires updating. As do we all, admitted Priest Kale. Our psychic abilities made us overconfident. We need to learn unpredictability. One by one, the other champions expressed similar requests. They wanted to understand how a species that had spent millennia fighting itself had become the most effective warriors in the galaxy. There's one condition, Miller said, struggling to his feet. The arena fell silent again. We're not interested in conquering anyone or starting wars. We'll teach you what we know, but only for defense. Only to help you protect yourselves if someone truly dangerous shows up. Thane's reptilian features formed what might have been a smile. Agreed, though I suspect that after today, there are very few species in the galaxy foolish enough to threaten us. As medical personnel arrived to tend to Miller's injuries, he looked around at the alien champions who had become his unexpected students. They were no longer looking at him as a primitive creature to be defeated, but as a teacher who had shown them truths they had forgotten. So what's the first lesson? Asked Captain Mark, water swirling around him as his protective sphere reformed. Miller grinned, wincing as the movement pulled at his split lip. Lesson 1. Never assume you know how your enemy thinks. Lesson 2. The most dangerous opponent is the one with nothing left to lose. And Lesson 3. When you're fighting for survival, there's no such thing as fighting dirty. And Lesson 4? Prompted Captain Freeze. Miller looked up at the thousands of alien faces in the viewing galleries, then back at the champions surrounding him. Lesson 4. We didn't win because we're better. We won because we're used to losing, and we've learned how to lose forward. As the medical team helped Miller toward the arena exit, the crowd rose to their feet in one final gesture of respect. The human who had walked into the arena as the representative of a primitive species was leaving as the teacher of an entire galaxy. Station Nexus was quickly converted into the first human galactic military academy. Over the following months, representatives from hundreds of species arrived to learn the chaotic, adaptive, survival-based fighting methods that humans had developed over millennia of conflict. And in the archives of the Galactic Council, a new law was written. Never underestimate a species that has learned to thrive in the face of extinction, for they possess the most dangerous weapon in the universe, the refusal to accept defeat. The path of death, it turned out, led not to destruction but to a strength that could only be earned through accepting mortality and choosing to fight anyway. And the galaxy would never be the same.